to stay away!
Can you forgive a monster?
You're a jinx! Do you hear me? Milo was right!
For me, that's such an understandable way that somebody's psyche could begin to fracture.
Silco thinks he made Jinx, but he didn't. You did.
I would actually disagree with Jinx on that. I think that it went even further back. I think
Vi's completely changed sides, so she's actually become the thing she hated at the very beginning.
Jinx feels like a girl who is beaten down by an identity that she is given by other people until the point where she can no longer fight it. So I'm done. I stop resisting.
Welcome back, everybody, to Frame of Mind, where psychology and filmmaking meet at the intersection of storytelling. My name is Jordan. I'm a video editor.
My name's Curtis. I'm a psychotherapist.
A lot of you have been waiting for this one. This is probably our most requested episode by far.
One of them, I think.
Certainly by the number of suggestions, and also by far, if you just go by the polls that we've done, asking you guys what your favorite franchises are. We're talking about Arcane.
Yes, finally something where we're actually timing it right. We're hopefully there's a discussion. Season 2's coming out. People are talking about it. So we wanted to really get into this because this is not my first time watching this, but this is your first time watching this. And I think this might be one that we really like.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other people like it too. And I think for very good reason. So it makes it awesome to talk about.
And it was such a weird experience for me. I didn't like it at first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the very first episode I watched probably 24 hours after watching A Silent Voice.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Very different emotional stuff going on there.
Yeah. You hadn't cleansed your palate yet.
If you want to see A Silent Voice, let us know. That's another one that's definitely been requested. But yeah, I had a hard time watching it at first. I think episode 1, I was like, eh. Episode 2, I was like whatever. Episode 3, I was like, oh, this is going to be good.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Something about it stood out for you then.
As soon as episodes 3 hit, I could sort of put the pieces together of oh, this is what they're building up to. They're really taking their audience on a very well-crafted journey.
Yeah.
It just took a little bit to get there. It was strong. It was thematically good, but I didn't really see how good it was until episode 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think when I watched it, it was when it first came out back in 2021. And so I was picking up the first episode. I think I liked it right from the very beginning. I'll be really curious to look and see when it was in episode 3 that felt for you like it turned a corner.
There was a moment.
Yeah,
exactly,
whatever that
we'll
moment was.
Yeah.
I'm going to be super interested to see what that was.
Mm-hmm. As soon as I got about halfway through this series, I just realized that it was basically the perfect episode for us to talk about because it's basically just contrast the show.
You know, in a lot of ways. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like you got older sister versus younger sister. You got red versus blue. You got upper class versus lower class. Piltover versus Zahn. You've got a good father figure in Vander. You got a bad father figure in Silco. You got a good mentor in Heimerdinger. You got a bad mentor in what's his name, Singed. Then there's this idea about don't go too fast. You have to take things slow. Tortoise and the hare. It's we got to progress forwards. And then there's even stuff like the 2D versus 3D animation.
Yeah.
Contrast is just baked into the story, into the visuals, into the characters. It's everywhere. And it just makes it so beautiful. I love it.
It's interesting too, because it feels like that contrast and the differences between characters is really what drives a lot of the plot forward.
Yeah.
This to me feels very much like you would call it a character-driven narrative.
Yes.
This is you have different people who are all trying to coexist in the same space.
Yes.
But they have different values, they have different motives.
Yeah.
And it's when those values and motives come into conflict with one another that's what progresses the story forwards.
Yes.
And I think there's something about when you construct a narrative that way, it makes it a little bit more, I don't know if it's interesting or immersive than when you just structure a story where this happens and this happens and this happens, this happens, and these characters just kind of follow the train tracks and just go with the narrative. It's it feels more, I think you would say authentic and organic. Because it's I believe that each of these characters would do the things that they would do.
Yes.
Because you presented me with their values, what's important to them, what they struggle with, and then you put them in front of a problem. Mm-hmm. It's well, obviously, yes, that makes sense with what they would do then.
Yes.
What that character does tracks with who you've told me that they are.
What I found super interesting about this scene here at the very beginning is that, first of all, it's thematic. It starts on a bridge, and then later on, Jinx will have this moment on a bridge where she kind of comes around full circle.
Yeah, one of the many examples that we'll see of foreshadowing
Yeah.
and things being mirrored and returns
Yes.
to old spaces.
Yes. But what I found really lovely about this was I didn't catch this the first time that I watched this, but the coloring is red.
Yep.
This is all red.
Yep.
And as much as this impacts both Vi and Jinx, this is really Vi's character development moment here.
Yeah,
And
the
so
loss
having
of parents. Yeah,
everything, because you can see that, like, you know, Powder's impacted, whatever, but this is where you see Vi really lose it at losing her mother.
Yep.
This is where she sees Vander.
Yep.
She's going to be modeling her future self after Vander. She's going to become this is subtly kind of showing you that we haven't even been introduced to these characters' color schemes yet, but all throughout, this is consistently going to be showing you just in one color choice that this is Vi's character development moment. This is impacting her.
yeah. It's interesting to me when, like, they have that moment where they see their parents.
Yeah.
And it's Vi looks at her parents and starts crying, and Powder looks at Vi.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's fascinating too how there's like a moment where she's almost trying to take care of her, right? Of like, let me comfort my big sister, let me try to support her. And I love this piece where, like, Vander drops the gauntlets.
Literally.
Yeah, in order to take up a mantle of a new role, right?
Yeah.
Because this is where he goes from fighter to father.
That's a good, it's a
This
good
is
line.
where he's moving from this position of, instead of me trying to protect by hurting the people on the other side,
Yeah.
it's time for me to turn back to the people who are in my care and to be responsible for them.
Yeah. He's almost got like the energy of Thor's.
Yep, in a lot of ways, absolutely.
It's not a one for one, but it's like I'm going to choose the non-violent route despite my entire history being one of violence.
He's got the same like archetype,
The warrior laying down his swords.
but specifically the warrior laying down his swords to become a caretaker for the next generation.
Yeah.
Because in both cases, for Thor's and Vander, they've now got kids that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
Which means they have to put down the mantle of violence to take on the mantle of fatherhood.
There's a shot here that I thought was really interesting where Vi looks at this enforcer and you can see it like she's scowling. It's like,
Yep.
how dare you?
Yep.
And it's so fascinating that this comes full circle because she basically becomes an enforcer.
Yeah.
Her teaming up with Caitlyn is I'm assuming, going into season 2, and the fact that I did a little bit of research into Lul's lore,
Yeah.
where Vi, the character in the game, she is on the enforcer side.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming in season 2, we're going to see that transition kind of fully take hold.
I mean, even when she teams up with Jace towards the end,
Yeah.
right? There's like that, she's kind of with Piltover's side because she needs to do the things that she wants to
Yeah.
get back at Silco.
Yeah.
She's trying to make transformation in the Undercity.
At the very least, she's symbolically changed sides to the point where the person that she scowled at has now become her.
Yeah.
So
which
it's-
is fascinating then when you bring that up and you think about Jinx's last words to Vi.
You've changed?
You've changed too.
Yeah.
Maybe you could love me like you used to. Even though I'm different. But you changed too.
And it's like, okay, but how has she changed? Because she still wants to, take care of her. She still cares for her a lot. But it's like, you switch sides.
Yeah.
You're on this side now. You're the one who's over here. And it kind of is this divide, which is interesting too in this scene because it feels like with this scowl in this moment where Vander and the kids are going to one side and the enforcers go to the other side, but there's still this facial expression for Vi.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes to me this idea of we're starting the series with a tenuous piece.
Yes.
Like we've decided to both go to our own sides and do our own thing, and we're not going to be in direct conflict, but we're still not happy with each other.
Yeah.
We're still like there's this underlying tension that's showing up.
Yes. Potent throughout the entire show.
Yep.
What do you think about the art style?
I really like it.
Yeah.
There's something about it that feels like I think the primary thing that I like about the art style is how it facilitates character emoting.
Yes. I think I know what you mean, but keep going. What do you mean by that?
The idea of like even like Vi's facial expression here and so many other characters' facial expressions throughout the show, you're going to be able to perceive emotions on their face and know what they're feeling without them saying anything.
Yes.
Which is so valuable. I think in a world where we come from,
Yeah, nothing. There was no dialogue in this scene.
Yep.
There was Powder singing at the beginning, which again
Yep.
is mirrored when she comes back to the bridge. At the end of the season. Anyways, there was no dialogue in this opening. It was just
Yep.
facial expression, action, visuals, done.
yep,
So
which is
powerful.
great because I feel like the animation style lends itself to both the action-oriented pieces where you can do things that you couldn't do in live action.
Yes.
But it also lends itself to an emoting and a subtleness that can sometimes be hard to do in animation.
Yes.
And so they really have this nice kind of blended space where they can accomplish both. And I
Yes.
think there's something that, I mean, first of all, it's fascinating because when you look at the behind the scenes pieces, to know that the Fortiche, the studio who animates this, they essentially use no motion capture.
Really?
Every single thing is hand rigged.
That's awesome.
And so there's something about, like, you would think, you see this so much in video games and animated shows now where people will have the facial trackers.
Yeah.
That they'll
the
do.
bodysuit.
Yeah, the bodysuit with the camera in front of them, and they'll have all the dots on their face so that they can track all the facial motions and they can capture it that way.
Yeah. So people who don't know will understand, like, the reason they do that is because it is so much more time efficient to have a base capture of what is your character doing
Yeah.
and then tweak it and smooth it out and amplify it in the ways that you want to. Molding something that's pre-existing is way more time efficient than doing something from scratch is basically the reason.
But apparently that is what they did here.
So they took
And
the
so-
more time-intensive route
Yep.
to get the exact look and style that they wanted.
Yeah, where it's all got this like handcrafted feel to it, and it's interesting too because from the background videos, what it looks like they did is they used tons of reference footage.
That's cool.
So like the animators will go and physically do the motions that they want to do and record themselves doing it.
Yeah.
And then they'll come back and have the video playing in front of them and then go and say, okay, now how do I rig the face so that it looks like that?
Oh, I see.
Which, I mean, yeah, it's probably more time consuming.
Way
It's
more
maybe
time
not as
consuming.
efficient. But there's something cool too about the idea of, you talk about people feeling the passion. There was an interesting thing where they were talking about how, like, you would walk through the office at Fortiche and you would see animators at their desk rigging somebody's face, and the animators would be like,
No, that's
and
so
they're like
cool.
kind of feeling it themselves, be like, how do I get like this? Because when I did this and I
Yeah.
feel this, I want to make it look like that. And there's almost something about the when the animator is not trying to replicate something, but embodying it.
Yes.
When it's not an actor giving the performance, but it's an animator giving the performance. How does that potentially translate to their ability to craft an animation that looks like something that connects with us?
You know what's kind of weird is that sort of, I think there's a little bit of a resurgence of this idea of the auteur. The more you can solidify the vision into one person's mind, the more cohesive something's able to be translated. So this idea of reducing the number of people that are giving input into something might actually make it more potent. So for example, it's not two people, an actor and then an animator, softening or rigging that expression afterwards. It's just one person from the very beginning doing something from start to finish.
Yeah.
That might have a more potent ability to give exactly the thing that you're going for.
Yeah.
Because there's not this conflict between this person's interpretation and then this person's reinterpretation. It's
Yeah.
like it's one writer the whole time when you think about like the facial expression being
Yeah.
the writing that you're doing. I don't know what it is about Riot or Fortiche Studios, but somebody along the production line really enjoyed animating spit coming out of characters' mouths.
I was going to say, this is like Spit the Anime.
this
Right? It's like the liquids that, like, whether it's tears or whether it's blood,
Yeah.
but so often saliva, you're like, oh, yeah, like anytime somebody gets punched, there's going to be like, blah.
somebody
coming
gets
out of their
angry, you
face.
see the spittle coming out of their mouth. Like,
It's hilarious that you noticed that because
It's
that was
gross.
so prominent to me.
yeah, but it's one of those things that gives that little bit of messy realism to it.
And
I
again,
feel like.
it's also different than anime.
Yeah.
Right? Because like in a traditional anime, you're not going to have as much of that, like, I guess we'd say like literal viscera.
Yeah.
Like the liquids, the bodily fluids, but in this blend of 3D, 2D animation, I think it lends itself a lot more to
It's really noticeable.
Yeah.
It stands out in a good way.
And it lends itself a lot more to using assets like that.
The final piece that I loved with this is that the final shot that they land on is where are they looking? That's the window to the meeting room for the council. And what is the very final shot at the very end? And it's even like, you see the window there. If you look up super close, there's almost like this crosshair on it where it's like aiming towards this thing. And then what does Jinx do at the very end of the show? It's like, that's where it ends off.
Start with the end in mind.
It's so good.
Why are we here?
You still don't understand.
What I don't understand is how you can work with them.
That's so cool. I don't understand how you can work with them. What are you going to do later on in the show, Vi? You're going to work with them.
That's a great point. And I think actually this is maybe a moment where that element of her is developing a little bit.
Or at least, we keep going back to it. It's the Robin Williams and Good Will Hunting moment. It's like, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen later on in the show.
Yep.
But you're not going to see it because it's hidden through story and metaphor.
Yep, exactly. Layered really deeply.
We were here. We saw what they did. I grew up knowing I'm less than them. That my place is down there. I want Powder to have more than that, and I'm willing to fight for it.
I'm interested to get your perspective, first of all, from a filmmaking stance. Why is this scene framed like this? Because the majority of the action, the content, the primary piece is Vi and Vander having a conversation.
Yes.
They are halfway off the screen.
Yeah.
So why, especially in an animation setting where you have almost infinite control of the camera, why have they framed it this way?
Yeah, so there's one thing that there's a couple things that scream out to me. One is that this is a vigil on the left-hand side.
Yep.
There's images of people, there's lanterns. It feels like, hey, these are dead people that we lost along the way. Yeah. And this is going to echo later on to this is going to echo at the tree later on when he shows Vi the vigil of all the people that they've lost along the way.
Exactly.
So that it's foreshadowing in that sense. This conversation on the right is with the knowledge or with the understanding that this has happened on the left. We've lost all these people.
Yep.
Like, their death will be in vain if we do nothing. Like, the context is showing you that this is happening because of this. There's another piece of it too, where it's also showing that Vi and Vander are basically like, they're very much the same. It's crowding them together, showing that the things that they're talking about, you're really closer than you think you are.
Although right now they're in opposing stances.
Yeah, it's true. It's opposing, but it's like Vi is younger Vander.
Yeah.
Like this is the perspective that you used to have. And that perspective was coming from all of the death and destruction and the pain that it had, which is also what's behind you, which is driving you, Vi.
Yep. But interesting that it's behind Vi and Vander's facing it.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
he can see it.
Yeah.
She can't.
Yeah. It's also this thing of progression. It's reading the screen from left to right. This happened. This is where I'm at. And then Vander's also like, no. Actually, having gone through the same progression, I'm not coming full circle, looking back on it from a different perspective.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's unnecessarily detailed in its symbolism.
But maybe that unnecessary detail is what gives it its gravitas, its depth, right? I think part of the other thing that this scene does is it sets the atmosphere for the question that Vander's going to ask her.
I know you want to hurt the topsiders for what they've done to us, but who are you willing to lose?
And he's telling her from experience, like, I led us across this bridge, but there's sacrifices. Like, I tried to make us fight and your parents died.
Which is foreshadowing. I did a thing. I lost somebody. You're going to do a thing. You're going to lose somebody.
But who are you willing to lose? Milo? Clagger? Powder?
Yeah, it's like, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. Are you willing to lose Milo, Clagger, and Powder? It's like, you will. Yep. In like one episode, you're going to lose all of them.
Yep, because the conflict doesn't, like, nobody wins in the conflict, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about this show is, like, you always want to be paying attention to what the camera has in frame.
Yeah.
Because that's what's important.
You are rewarded for paying attention.
Yep. And so you watch, like, how is this shot framed? They're still having a dialogue, but Vander is essentially completely out of frame.
Yeah.
Right? You can barely even see anything. You can't tell what his facial expression is.
Yeah, all the context is focused on how is this impacting Vi.
But then you look at what Vi's facial expression does. She listens to the uncertainty in Vander's voice. Ooh. I don't know, I'll figure it out. And it's like this concern. He can't deal with it. feeling sad, and then it shifts to the vigil, seeing the people that are lost, and then it pivots to what I would call like that sigh, determination.
Yeah, that's a look at determination right there. Thank goodness they know how to write a strong female character.
Yeah.
What I found so interesting is that they had zero qualms with giving these characters emotional moments, and they're also badass and super cool, and we like them. And it's like, we've probably said this to death, and so we won't harp on it again, but it's just like, for goodness sake, like, giving your character emotional moments does not hinder their ability to be cool and awesome and badass. It actually amplifies it.
Yeah.
The ability to see a character do all these cool, fun moves and be super capable, and then also having this scene of vulnerability, it doesn't hinder them. It amplifies them, because both the cool thing looks cooler when it's put next to something emotional. The emotional thing feels more potent when it's put next to something that's just cool and badass. It's like Laura and I were shopping at IKEA the other day, and there's this tiny little children's chair.
Yeah.
And like, as a joke, like, I sat in it and she took a picture of me. I look like a giant.
Yeah.
The chair looks super tiny. I look super big. Both of those things on their own, I don't look super giant in real life. I'm like 5'9", but like, I look massive because I was put next to something that contrasted me. It's like, that is what you need in order to make your characters look the way that they want. So for goodness sake, Rings of Power Season 2 came out, and I'm just as pissed off with it. So that's what's motivating this.
Well, and there's something interesting when, like, you get some interviews with some of the writers.
Yeah.
And like, one of the things that Amanda talked about when she's talking about, because I think she was a real proponent or one of the forces for writing some of these female characters.
Yes.
One of the things that she said that I really liked, that I thought was interesting, was she'd said, when it comes to writing a fight scene, like, a fight scene is essentially just another dramatic scene. It still
Go
needs,
check out our fight scene video, by the way.
Yeah.
Link in the corner or in the description below.
A fight still needs to be motivated. It still needs to have these shifts happening, and you still need to learn something about your character.
Yes.
Through it.
Yes.
Something needs to change for them, or you need to discover something. So there's like an element to that where I wonder, I almost want to kind of deconstruct that idea of a strong female character, because it feels like a label that...
Oh, it's totally a label that's been overused.
Yeah.
And like done to death.
And it's now so diffuse that it doesn't really mean anything. But if I think specifically about how they've structured these characters, it's like, what is it that makes Vi strong? Like, there's certainly a capability that she has.
Yeah.
Like, good fighter, talented, all this kind of stuff. But there's also something about where we see with her the values that she's fighting for.
Yeah.
Her attachments to people. And again, you think about contrast. She doesn't approach everything the same way.
Yes.
She has a determined element to her, but she also has, especially when you look at her interactions with Powder, like this soft side to it.
Yes.
Like, she treats Milo and Clagger very differently than she treats Powder.
Yeah.
Because there's that attachment to her. Like,
Yeah.
you even think about when they're doing the heist.
Yeah.
And like, the relationship between Vi and Powder starts at its best. They start at the top, and it's only downhill through the rest of the series.
Yes.
Like, their relationship only deteriorates from the beginning of the series on through the rest of it.
Yes.
And part of what I really like in this scene that gets mirrored really nicely is, what does Vi say to Powder to get her to jump off the roof?
I'll get her.
No! Powder, look at me! What did I tell you?
That I'm ready.
That's right. So?
You're ready.
Oh, yeah.
And then what does she say here to keep her at home?
You're not coming.
I'm not afraid.
It's too dangerous.
But families stick together. You said it yourself.
I know what I said.
I want to fight. I can help.
You're not ready.
That's cool.
And it's, even though it's technically true,
Yes.
and it's technically appropriate, yes, she was ready for the heist. No, she was not ready to be here, and she definitely should not have gone to save Vander. But there's a piece where, like, it's that the character doing, I don't know if you'd say it's the right thing for the wrong reasons or the wrong thing for the right reasons, but like, it's definitely correct.
Yeah. It's the right thing for the right reason with the wrong setup. That's not what Powder needs at this moment.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to be told. So it's the right thing. She's not ready for the right reason. You don't want her to get hurt. But that it's taking away this idea that like what Powder needs is to be built up, not to be pushed down.
It's interesting because before she saw this part of Powder and she spoke to it, now she's missing it. Because when she was gonna give herself up, she told Powder, what makes you different is what makes you strong.
Yeah.
And that statement speaks to a huge amount of Powder's, let's say, character focus or flaws or her needs, which is Powder is so focused on belonging and strength.
Yes.
And it's usually, especially like in the Undercity, in Zaun, it's to belong, you need to be strong enough.
Yeah.
It's lots of might makes right in Zaun, whereas Piltover is way more intellectually based.
Yeah.
And there's a piece where,
That's a good point. Yeah.
like, Vi in that statement recognizes that she doesn't tell Powder, like, no, you're like just the same as that. No, you are different, but your difference is a strength. It is a value. We love what makes you different and brings it in.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the vulnerabilities that Powder has. But in this moment, you're not ready. Like, I don't want to lose you. Even though those things are both true and valuable, it doesn't speak to what Powder needs.
Yeah.
Because it's separating her from the group.
Yeah.
Because she is not capable or strong enough. And that's like...
Yeah. You do not belong because you're not strong.
Yeah. And
like that's what's being conveyed.
It just pokes her right in the wound of the heart.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if you've ever had this kind of experience in the past for yourself, but I can tell you from my experience, when somebody says the thing that pokes you in that heart wound,
Yeah.
like everything they say after kind of falls on deaf ears.
Oh yeah. You don't hear any of the words. All you hear is the intention, and that colors everything that they say then.
So like you're all I have left, I need you to be safe, all that probably is irrelevant, because right now what Powder is feeling is, oh, I'm not wanted because I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
For me, this scene was what really got me on board.
This is exactly
This
where
is the moment for you?
This is the moment for me too.
I can see now. So why is it the moment for you? Because I think I can relate.
Because everything up until this point has been strong narrative, but cookie cutter. It's like we're gonna have two sisters fighting the class divide. Cool, I've seen this. Steampunk, cool, whatever. And like you had a moment where the enforcer woman was shot, and you see the kind of blood. You're like,
yeah,
that's your sort of first moment of like, oh, this is gonna be a little bit darker.
Yeah.
And then this is the moment where you see like, oh, this is gonna be psychologically very dark. Yeah, even with the monkey being beheaded there, that's a very uncomfortable shot to look at.
Yep, the moment where she like grabs stuff, the rage and wanting to destroy something.
Yeah.
Because you're so upset. Like watching this scene.
Yeah.
I had a flashback to being 8 years old.
It captures that like childhood. I have zero control over my emotions.
Yeah.
So this is
and you don't have anybody to help contain it for you. So it's all spilling out because you're alone, you're by yourself, and you just want to like lash out at something.
Yeah.
But then even after this, the moment of like things decompress, and then she drops it.
Yeah.
Like all the emotion in that moment for me was like, that felt real.
Yeah.
That felt like I wasn't watching an animation anymore. It felt like I was watching a real person. And so again, like props to the animators to be able to manually rig a face.
Yeah.
To be able to reflect that human emotion that well.
Yeah.
Where they can communicate it that effectively.
Yes.
Is phenomenally impressive.
This is the best fight sequence in the entire show, in my opinion. And what's interesting is that this is not a fight sequence against somebody.
Yeah.
It's a fight sequence against herself and her understanding of her relationship with her sister and the people around her. It's like, this is I need to prove myself. I need to let out my rage. It's like 30 seconds.
Yep.
And like, it's just her punching a bag.
Yeah.
Again, check out our fight sequences episode that we just released, last month. But it just goes to show that you don't need flashy, cool sequences to make a good fight sequence. You need stakes. You need stakes and you need reasons for the character to be doing what they're doing.
Yep.
Like, this was the thing that Vi was training against. Who does Jinx want to prove herself more to than Vi?
There's lots of cool stuff with that. I think the framing of it initially, like having the scene in the earlier episodes where Vi is using the punching bag.
Yeah, it's a callback.
It gives a little bit more context to the scene.
Yeah.
Part of the other piece that I love about it is, I don't know if other people have this opinion or not, but what I would say is like an underrated or a very subtle but super valuable narrative tool is the scoreboard.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Like-
it's like she doesn't reach Vi's level.
Yeah. And so there's that kind of thematic piece about like Jinx's whole piece is being strong enough.
Yeah.
Here is a objective measurement of strength.
Yes.
Guess what? You're still not as good as your sister.
Yeah.
And now there's this piece of like, I would imagine for Jinx, you know, the mentality is I need to overcome Vi so
Yeah.
that if I'm stronger than her, then I'm definitely strong enough to belong.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, an interesting piece about her trying to do it on Vi's level, just punching.
Yeah.
And then she sees, oh, I only got second place, and then pulls out the gun. It's like, okay, great. If I can't beat her, what am I going to do? I'm going to use these other tools at my disposal.
Yeah.
Kind of, I think, leading to the idea of what makes you different makes you strong.
Yeah.
Which then ends up, I kind of like, and then in the last scene, like Jinx kind of gets it over on everybody.
Yeah.
Like she beats Vi, she beats Caitlyn, she beats Silco.
Yeah.
Like she's the one in control at the end because she's used all these things that make her different. The other super cool thing about the scoreboard though is I love how subtly it does storytelling.
Yes.
And when you think about like maybe one of the valuable things about what doesn't matter whether they're male or female, writing strong characters in general.
Yeah.
Like you need to give some sort of indication to the audience, especially if you're going to drop in on these characters midway through their journey where they're already capable and powerful and strong. You need to give the audience a reason to believe that.
Yes.
And what's a better way than seeing a scoreboard of like whatever it is, 10 or 12 different high scores where it's all Vi. And kind of the implication of that is you see that she's clearly been doing this a lot.
Yeah.
She's been training tons. And you don't need a training montage from when she's 8 all the way up until when she's 15 or whatever. You just need to see a scoreboard where it's like, okay, clearly she's been working really hard.
And you're almost double dipping because this is
Yeah.
this is Jinx's moment to show how strong I've gotten. But while doing that, you've shown how much Vi was doing to get strong.
Yeah, like when Vi was however many years younger,
Yeah.
she was still better.
Yeah.
But there's a part too where like having that scoreboard really, as an audience member, it gives me some reason to believe that when that kid who is like all hulked out and roid raging on Shimmer
Yes.
beats Grayson and all the other enforcers, like beats Vander, to then have Vi go toe to toe with him, for Vi to beat all of Silco's goons. Like,
yeah.
you really need to have a strong, and it's like, well, if this is a girl who literally is just spending all of her time fighting
Yes.
and punching away, like this is what she does, and you have the evidence that she's been doing this for a long time. She's been practicing, she's been training, she's been consistent. You have the evidence for it.
Yeah.
Now it makes me way more able to buy into the idea that she can beat all these guys.
Yes.
Because you see she's put the work in.
1000%. Guys, taking a little break here to just say thank you so much for your guys' support thus far on the channel.
Yeah.
There's been some wildly positive reception towards some of the videos. You guys blew our expectations out of the water. So just thank you.
Yeah.
And please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel and helps us to get put in front of more people and grow this to something where, hey, maybe we can make this our full-time jobs.
Yeah. It's going to be really exciting if we can get that. And so thank you guys all for your support already.
Just you guys liking and subscribing the video, that's a huge support in and of itself. If you guys wanted to take that further, consider in the link in the description down below, bookmarking the link there to Amazon just for our affiliate link, just so that anytime you guys buy stuff on Amazon, Amazon will give us a kickback. It's just a nice little way that instead of you donating to us, just your everyday Amazon shopping, then Amazon will give us a little bit of a kickback. If you like any sort of these nondescript, totally normal geometric pattern
Yep, exactly.
notebooks that you might have seen pop up in episodes episodes previous and this one, there might be a link to a store where you can purchase those as well.
Yeah.
Just, it's just interesting geometric patterns on a notebook.
Well, it's just kind of been a nice little kickback because I think with you and me talking about all these different creative works, it's really spurred my idea for creativity. And so this is kind of like our attempt to make something very cool that allows us to be creative, that hopefully is also going to be valuable for you guys. That isn't just like a, hey, donate to us or do whatever, but like helps us do something that's fun.
Yeah. And last but not least, if you guys want to become a member to the channel, we don't have anything paid or any tier structures necessarily beyond just like, hey, you remember now? We're going to be fleshing that out in the future, maybe coming up with a Patreon channel, maybe coming up with some tier structures. But for the moment, it's just a way for us to gauge how interested you are in seeing other things like, hey, maybe you want to see unedited versions of the show. Maybe you want to see other things. Like it'll just help us to get a little bit more of that connection and help turn this from a channel where people just watch something to maybe building more of a community where we can have some more deep interaction.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what you guys kind of want us to do, if it's like unedited videos or like Discord servers, or what kinds of things are going to make this more community-based, more interactive.
Early access to videos, you get it a day before everybody else, sort of a thing.
Like what helps the dialogue for the stuff that we love talking about, that if you guys are watching, you probably love talking about too, and seeing what we can kind of create here.
And anyways, thanks again, guys. Thank you so much, and back to the episode.
To a degree, I see Arcane being Jinx's story.
See, that's the other weird thing where it's like I didn't watch this up until like a couple weeks ago, and I knew that everybody loved Jinx. Like Jinx was the favorite character.
Yeah.
In popular culture, and I didn't know that she was a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I also didn't know that she had far less screen time than Vi, probably. From a thematic story perspective, I can see how this is like Jinx's story. But from a minutes on screen time, this is Vi's story.
Yep.
And so I was kind of surprised seeing A, how she was a bad guy, B, how little screen time she had, and then C, how messed up she was, and then how much everybody loved her.
Yeah.
Because like she's got a lot of things wrong with her that we would normally say this disqualifies you as a good character that we should like and dress up as. So like murdering animals, because she has that one moment where she like sees the crow and she's like, cruelty to animals is one of those things that's like, oh, this is a dark, disturbed person that you should stay away from.
Yeah.
That's like one of our signals, like in real life, but also in media. It's like, that's somebody to stay away from, but we love her still. Like she's an interesting character. As a therapist, when you look at Jinx, do you see that psychological break happening at the climax when Vi leaves her? Or are you seeing signals of things happening much earlier on?
It's a mix. I feel like when I see Pout at the very beginning, I don't see anything inherently wrong with her.
Right.
Like there isn't this seed of mental health issues that's there inherently in her from when she was young. Like, hey, genetically, this is just what's going to happen to you going to the future. I don't see that at all. What I see is, and I was thinking about this earlier, like a couple of days ago, but it's like the way that she is presented from a mental health perspective, it's not really something that follows your traditional or typical mental health diagnoses. Like she's got lots of different things that kind of almost blend together in a way.
Yeah, she's not a DSM-5 example of one particular.
No, she's more like, and when you bring up the animals pieces, it makes me want to add one more to the list. Like there's a blended elements here of PTSD, of psychosis, of multiple personality disorder, and antisocial disorder. But none of them, I would say, really represent what it would look like in real life.
Yeah.
It's more like taking...
Not a clean diagnosis.
No, it's more like they've taken elements of them and blended them into something new.
Yeah.
So like...
Maybe something that's not on point literally, but is more thematically potent.
Yeah, you wouldn't see it in the real world. Like even the way that her psychosis develops, it's a lot more narratively cohesive than a typical psychosis would be.
Yeah.
Like most of the time when I've dealt with clients or patients who are dealing with the psychosis, there's some very classic, typical ways that you see it presented.
Yeah, markers that come to the surface.
Yeah, like the disconnection with reality will show up in very similar themes of like lots of people will have thoughts that the government has planted a chip inside their brain and can hear their thoughts.
Yeah.
Even when you think about A Beautiful Mind, where the main character thinks that somebody from the CIA is working with him.
Yeah.
Like those are far more common ways that psychosis is presented.
Yeah.
It's not typical.
Quite literally like a narrative fantasy that you're telling yourself.
Yeah,
Like
it's-
I'm a part of this bigger thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's not typical that it would be, oh, my dead friends are now talking to me about the things from my past that haunts me.
Yeah.
That's way more cohesive than most psychoses will be presented as.
Yeah.
Not
Not impossible.
No, not impossible, not like it's never happened, but it's just less commonly observed.
Yes.
But everybody in their psyche has these kind of fault lines, like on the crust of the earth. And when we go through experiences, if you tap it or hit it in just the right way, there are these common ways that we will all tend to fracture. It'll look different, but the themes and the patterns will show up very similarly.
I see.
Like there's, if you could follow through and backtrack and see everything from an omniscient perspective, you would see, oh, this is why someone's developed anxiety. This is why somebody has developed depression. This is why someone's developed this. These things all kind of make sense. We don't have that omniscient perspective, so it all often is very, it seems very opaque and mysterious to us. It's hard to grasp. But
Right.
the value and the benefit of a narrative like this is we get to see the backstory. We get to observe from a more omniscient perspective everything that happens to Powder and why
Right.
she is the way that she is. And it really does seem like what I see is certainly that crux moment where the conflict with her and Vi peaks and Vi leaves her.
Yes.
Like that is definitely a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
I only wanted to help my
I told you to stay away.
Please.
I told you to stay away!
No. Why did you leave me?
Because you're a jinx! Do you hear me? Milo was right.
No.
It's
Which has been preceded by a life of nothing but trauma.
yeah.
The final trauma that broke the traumatic Campbell's back.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to keep note of is that it's not going to be the one event.
Yes.
Oftentimes it is the progression of things that preceded it, and then this is the final tap. Almost like you think about the when she sets off the explosion in episode 3, and it's
Yeah.
like that monkey had to hit that crystal a lot of times before it finally exploded.
Yeah.
And it's like it wasn't just the last one, but it was every time it got hit before that
Yeah.
that leads up to this.
What a weird, thematically consistent thing to have in the story.
Yeah, like her moment of like her psyche's like smash, 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 smash. The last one,
Yeah.
break.
Your mom died. Vander's gone. You're abandoned. I'm
How
sure.
many things can you get hit before you fracture?
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a way better way to look at the mental health pieces. And even though it's not like DSM accurate, why I think there's value in the presentation of the mental health pieces here is that what does it take for you to fracture? What does it take for this to start to fall apart? And then how does it show up? And I think there, even if it's not realistic, there's some cool consistencies with like, oh, of course, if Powder realized that Milo and Claggor died because of her, obviously she would be haunted by that.
Yes.
And what's a really convenient narrative way to put forward that somebody is haunted by that? Well, we'll give her a psychosis where they're actually talking to her, right? It's like she's kind of literally haunted by her demons in a, maybe not realistic, but a way that makes sense to us.
Yeah.
A narrative way that feels like we can grasp it and it makes sense.
Symbolically very basic.
Yeah, and there's again they bring in pieces of like MPD where she's got essentially these two parts that are split. It's like Jinx and it's Powder, and there's a whole back and forth between who's she gonna pick, what is she gonna do. That's not really how multiple personality disorder plays out typically. But again, it's that piece of we're going to thematically present this idea of there's two parts for it, which by the way, I love the idea. I don't know if you caught this, but like the fact that Powder as a kid has one braid and then Jinx as an adult has two braids.
Yeah.
Is like super. I'm sure that was a not retcon, but like I'm sure that if there was any intent behind that, because Jinx had been designed for years before this, that they went back and thought, well, we'll make Kid Powder more like this and give her one rather than two. For I don't know if they thought about it that way, but and so there's pieces where like you have all that together. What I feel like they really are, they're pushing through here. The primary driver mental health wise is definitely the trauma.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing that they want to put forward. And that's the thing that she's grappling with the most. the psychoses, the whether she becomes Powder or Jinx, these are all kind of like secondary elements, icings on the cake to try to craft a character like this. And a part of what I think, there's a piece of where when you think about why people like Jinx, like why are people drawn to her, there's a thing where I feel like she kind of takes the Harley Quinn archetype and really deepens it. Like we get so much more backstory and understanding, and we have these first 3 episodes where we get to really emotionally connect with Powder before we see what happens. And there's a piece where I think people, especially if they've watched this show, if you were a fan of her from League and kind of were drawn that way, I think there might be more of that like chaotic energy that people enjoy. That kind of like, even the idea of like living life on the edge a little bit, where you're kind of just barely still in control. And I think, which is another reason why they probably put forward her as kind of having some of these psychoses, these mental health pieces, is like, she's barely grabbing onto control. She's still barely managing to hang on to this. And so there's this inherent riskiness with Jinx that I think people are attracted to. Even in the scene where it's like, she's about to set off a grenade right beside herself, and at the very last minute then like kicks it away and it explodes at the bottom of the tunnel. It's like,
it's like that Russian roulette mentality of somebody who's willing to play with fire.
And even if we look at that from an objective perspective and say, that's terrible, why would you do that? That's so dangerous. There's something inherent in us that I think is like, but that risk is like energizing,
tantalizing.
That hits my dopamine, and that's a rush of feeling right there. And in a way where we don't have to be the ones who do that, we get to watch the character do that, and it kind of brings it out for us, right? But I think underneath all of the mental health stuff for Jinx, there's a really interesting piece that I think is important for people to grasp, which kind of drives why she becomes who she becomes, and why she struggles with the things that she struggles with, is because she is having a crisis with her identity. I don't know if the writers intended it this way, but I almost kind of disagree from a psychological perspective with what Jinx says about herself.
Silco thinks he made Jinx, with all his rants and his hard-won lessons.
But he didn't make Jinx. You did.
But he didn't make Jinx. You did. To Vi. I would actually disagree with Jinx on that, because I think that it went even further back. I think Milo made Jinx.
Really?
Yeah. Because of...
He is very prominent throughout all of her psychosis.
The framing of the identity, right? Like, who initially says that Powder is a Jinx?
Oh, that's a good point.
It's Milo.
Every time she comes, something goes wrong. She jinxes every job.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting piece about how it's framed and developed through the show, is that the first time that he says that Powder is a Jinx is in there, and it's framed in a way where clearly that's something that's shown up in the past. This isn't the first time.
It's a callback.
Yeah.
Even though it's our first time seeing it.
It's a callback to something that happens before what we get access to as the audience. But the first time that he says it about Powder, arguably, she did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like, she finds these random crystals. She drops them totally by accident. Who would have realized that they were explosive if you have contact with them and they're unstable? Like, she has zero way of knowing that. It is completely random happenstance.
Yeah.
If somebody else had walked in that room and picked up the crystals, they would have been the ones responsible for the explosion.
Interesting.
So the very first time it happens, it's not her fault.
Yeah.
But it's framed by the people around her as, this is Powder's fault. She's a Jinx.
Yeah.
And what happens is that there's this repeating theme that continues to occur throughout the show, where Powder continues to be responsible for explosions and killing her friends. And it seems to happen more and more in a way that she can't escape. So, like, she tries to help rescue Vander, ends up killing her friends and everybody else and being the cause of all this problem. And then they get onto the airship when they're smuggling, and she's the one who shoots their own team. And like, it just keeps happening where the Jinx is that she keeps hurting the people on her side or the people that she loves. And that thing, I think, haunts her because she wants to, like in episode 3, like, what's her motivation? I can help. There's something that I can do. There's something that I can use to be strong enough. And it's interesting to me how, like, the crystals, the primary MacGuffin in the show, follows Jinx throughout the entire thing.
Yes.
Like, she starts with the crystals, and then she steals the second generation crystal, and then it kind of keeps going towards the end.
Conveniently color-coded to match her so that it's thematically on point.
And it keeps being the fact that she keeps hurting the people that are on her own side until the very, very last scene where Silco is about to shoot Vi. And it's, well, okay, I have to make a choice. She kills Silco. And it's like, it's interesting because she's asking Violet to make the choice about, do you want Powder or do you want Jinx? But when she ends up killing Silco, it's like, she is then the one who, unprompted, sits in the chair, makes the decision.
Yeah.
And to me, what it feels like is Jinx feels like a girl who is beaten down by an identity that she is given by other people until the point where she can no longer fight it. It feels like this is a force of nature that I can't fight against anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm done. I stop resisting.
Yeah.
And that's where she makes that full turn towards Jinx, where then she's like, all right, if this is who I am, I guess I'm going to break shit. She's always stealing defeat from the jaws of victory.
Exactly.
In a way.
And it's weird too how like that final last thing that happens at the very end is like you mentioned that she's hurting and killing people accidentally. This is the first time she's done it intentionally. It's almost like the explosion that killed Milo and Clagger was sort of, it's brought back full circle now. It's like, well, I'm going to cause an explosion and I'm actually going to try to cause some damage now. This is the first time that a crystal explosion from her has happened intentionally.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because even like when she's like tinkering around with that technology and she's like, oh, let's try it. It's an accidental explosion.
That's what feels very reminiscent to the clients that I work with.
The explosions with the MacGuffin crystal?
No, the being beaten down by an identity that is imposed on you.
Right.
And the idea that at some point, identity is going to become the primary driver for a person. So if I keep being presented with this framework for how I am in the world, you're a Jinx, 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 it takes energy to fight against that. And you need pieces of evidence to support you in contradicting that.
Yes.
No, I'm not a Jinx because of this and because of this and because of this. But for Jinx, she loses it all.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't have the support of the family, of the people around her. She gets to this new family with Silco and Zahn where it's like, no, they're all reinforcing the Jinx story, even if it's from like a positive lens. Like, nah, use what they told you to your advantage and use that power to make them respect you and like whatever.
Yeah.
It's still reinforcing an identity that fundamentally hurts for her.
Yes.
And there's that process, the having to fight against an identity that I don't want, but it seems like it's the only way for my survival to take place in this world.
Yes.
For me, that's such an understandable way that somebody's psyche could begin to fracture.
Yes.
Where it's like, you want to be this person, everybody keeps pulling you over here, and there's tension that keeps creating fractures and challenges and difficulties that starts to deteriorate and like degrade your connection to reality until the moment where you need something cohesive.
Yeah.
So what do? You decide to sit in one of the chairs. And it's cool to see with her process of recovering from the bridge fight with Echo. She gets injected with all the shimmer, and so her eyes turn purple, and it's this like signal of like way more ominous when you see her in the dark.
Yeah.
Kidnapping Vi and like stepping out from the dark, and you see like the purple in her eyes shining, and it's like, okay, there's something really ominous and sketchy about it.
Yeah. Which is interesting too, because you do see the purple show up when she first joined Silco. Like, and there's no shimmer involved, but it's a thematic precursor. That's sort of.
I didn't even realize that.
I watched before this kind of in preparation. I rewatched the Corridor Digital animation breakdown for the series, and it's so interesting to see how like one of the things they focused in on was the anticipation of visual moments.
Yeah.
So like a punch that's powerful needs to be preceded by a wind up.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how narratively speaking, this moment from the editing perspective is preceded by a literal wind up.
Yeah.
Like we're going to prepare your mind, something's gonna happen, set it down, clank, clank, like character looks. Clanger busts through the wall. Milo frees Vander. And so you have all of these things like building to attention, and we're going to but it's not just the thing that's happening, it's all of the things that are happening around it.
Yep.
And also what's happening cross-cutting with scenes before and after this. It's Victor and Jace figuring out the keys to unlocking Hextech.
Yeah.
So it's all these things that are culminating to an end. And what I love too is that cross-cutting back and forth from Victor and Jace to this scene here is that you see simultaneously the immense positive and the immense negative that this technology has. It's like this is some awesome, cool, floaty, save the world type technology.
Very, very slow, safe, and in control when you do it right.
Yeah. And at the same time has immense destructive killing capabilities.
And it's interesting because it makes you think like there's the contrasting between the two groups who are using the Hextech crystals, right? It's like Jason and Victor on the one hand and then Powder on the other hand. One of the things about being like this theme for Powder of being different, it seems to me like she would probably belong a lot more in Piltover than Zahn, wouldn't she?
That's a good point, actually.
Like, even just like her tinkering, like her mechanical stuff, like that is way more.
She should have been in the academy with Victor and Jace.
Yeah, because if she had, like everybody else who's around her, like Clagger, Milo, and Vi, they all are very physically based.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Whether it's like smashing or fighting or lockpicking, like it's all tangible and physical.
Yeah.
Versus Powder's being different is probably much less about her being
tinkery versus intellectually.
Well, it's less about her being flawed or different, and it's really just more about her being in the wrong place.
Interesting.
Like everything that she has would be super valuable if it was like guided by the academy, or if it was, you know, supported in that way. There's lots of parallels between her and Jace and Victor and how they navigate the use of power. But yeah, there really is something about her. She's not flawed or broken. She's just in the wrong spot. And maybe a good piece to be paying attention to when you think about if there's a flaw or an error in a character. It's like, is it really because there's something broken or wrong with them, or are they missing something?
Yeah.
Are they missing a support? Are they missing a guidance? Or are they missing an environment within which what they're doing would actually be really conducive and helpful?
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. It's cool, too, how that use of power with the crystal is symbolized not just in the crystal itself and how people are using it, but also in the council.
Yeah.
What the crystal is an imperfect round shape of immense power that can be used for good and evil. The council is a group of people surrounded in an imperfect circle, polygonal shape of people wielding power that can either be positive or negative.
Yep.
It's like the crystal is the council, like for all intents and purposes. And so the crystal is like the physical, very on the surface way that you kind of see that playing out. But that's the visual metaphor for everything else that's happening on a political level.
Well, there's something very alchemical about the circle of power.
Yeah.
Right? And kind of the base archetypal theme of that idea.
Yeah. You see both Jace and Victor starting from the place of finding the Hextech technology, and then Victor's taking the more physical alchemical route, whereas Jace is taking the more political route.
Yeah.
It's like we're both doing the same thing, but we're going through opposite sort of ends of this, of this thematic circle here. And we're going to I'm guessing we're going to meet again on the other side. I don't know what's going to happen in season 2, but I'm guessing that there's going to be a little bit of that, like we are both ascending in terms of our power. And I'm guessing there's going to be a pinnacle meet at the very end.
I don't know if you want spoilers for season 2 or
Oh, no.
what I predict anyways.
Oh, no, if you don't know it to be the case.
I don't know it to be the case.
Yeah,
but
predict away.
there's something about even the way that there's a framing of Piltover being much more, even in just the architecture, it's like much more structured, rigid, and inorganic.
Yes.
And then Zahn is being much more unstructured and organic.
Yeah.
And I think there's something interesting about Victor originally being from the Undercity.
Yes.
And if you look at the champion that he is based off of, because he's a champion in League.
Yes.
He is aligned with Zahn.
Yes. Ooh,
So
good point.
I have a feeling that in season 2, Victor's pathway is going to look like, hey, we're going to go and meet up with Zahn.
Yeah.
My guess anyways.
There's a tangent that I'm probably going to go on here. We'll find a way to fit this in.
Sure.
I am so surprised and happily astonished by how many parallels they were able to fit in without it feeling overwhelming. Because you have Powder and Vi, sisters who are very different. You have Jace and Victor, who metaphorically are brothers who are very different.
Yeah.
You have Heimerdinger and you have Singed, who are the mentors, who are opposite. You have Jace and you have Victor, who are the Piltover versus Zahn people who are working together. You have Caitlyn and you have Vi, who are
Piltover and Zahn
where people are working together. You have Silco and you have Vander. You have like all of these contrasting pairs that are coming together, breaking apart, mixing together. Like everything is happening.
It's very dynamic.
It feels almost like, just like, you know, you'll see characters taking this crystal and like looking at it. It's like you're getting perspective for this world because you're seeing everything from like, you're seeing every possible combination of people, where even Heimerdinger and then Echo at the very end, like they're like, you're getting this interesting perspective of all this different stuff. And it's like, it just feels so, it feels like a lot. It's so cool how if you have the same theme that's being explored from multiple different angles, it doesn't feel overwhelming.
No, because there's like each person's perspective seems fresh. It doesn't feel like you're beating that theme to death over and over again, even if you're revisiting it multiple times.
And because you've been introduced to it already and you've started that thought process of like, what is this theme? What does it mean to work through this theme?
Yep.
It's like going through it a second time, it doesn't take as much energy, but you're still getting that new perspective.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take as much work. You're not sorting through like, okay, this character is there's. It's like, it's so much easier to digest everything.
Well, and there's something cool about, I think, like there's almost this unpacking and unraveling that happens when you start from something very simple.
Yes.
Which brings me back to the idea of what in the behind the scenes, what Christian talks about, the kind of spurring on and motivating thing for the whole show is the idea of he's trying to ask a question to the audience that he doesn't have an answer to.
You know, I think we want to also ask some questions that we think should be asked without necessarily giving you the answer, but at least asking like, hey, can a monster ever be forgiven? I don't know.
Can you forgive a monster?
Ooh, that's a great question.
And it's cool because like in the behind the scenes, when he asks questions, he's like, this is the question I'm asking the audience. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no clue what the right answer is, but I'm just going to throw some stuff out there. I'm going to put some ideas behind it. I'm going to see how these characters interact with it. And we're going to see what we end up with.
That's so interesting.
Like we'll have questions or challenges, I think, with shows that feel very preachy or that feel like they're condescending to their audience.
Yeah.
And part of what I wonder is when you have shows like that and compare it to shows like this, is the root of that or the cause of that, on one hand, show creators starting with a question that they don't have an answer to?
Yeah.
Versus, on the other hand, show creators starting with an answer to the question they already have and wanting to put that on the audience.
Yeah.
One is very exploratory, opens up and probably lends itself to lots of creative interests. The other one probably is going to feel very stale and stagnant because it is essentially railroading.
That's a good point.
There's no exploration. There's no curiosity. There's no trying to see. And in a way, it kind of almost eliminates the ability to empathize with the characters because you're never going to get the exploration of, well, how about from the monster side of things? How did Jinx end up becoming the way that she became, right? Can you empathize and understand with why a monster might be looking for forgiveness? Because she started out as this little girl who just wanted to help and belong and be strong enough. Yeah. And if you know that part of the monster, are you more inclined to be like Vi and be like, I want to forgive you because she understands who that little girl is underneath Jinx.
Yeah.
But if you have writers who are like, no, this is the right answer, and we're just going to do that, do we ever get empathy with the antagonist?
Yeah.
Do we ever get protagonists who feel like they have to struggle with difficult things because they're trying to figure out the answer to this question? They don't have the answer right away. They don't feel like they're stagnant and one-dimensional because they had the answer from the very beginning and they finished.
Yeah.
It's like they really had to work through, and we don't actually know what answer they like. What is Vi going to come to in season 2? We don't know, because like now Powder has kind of chosen the monster. He's kind of chosen to become Jinx. Now, once she moves forward from this, will Vi be able to find a way back to Powder to forgive Jinx for all the stuff that's going to happen next? I don't know.
Yeah. It's so out of left field, but it also lines back with exactly what you're saying, is that I read just a couple hours before we started filming this, actually, that one of the inspirations behind the conflict and sort of the like contrasty nature and like the two sides of everything that's going on was actually, a lot of that was spurred on by how they viewed the interesting nature of the inability for the political left and right in America to talk to each other.
Really?
Yeah. So that
I wasn't aware of that.
That was explicitly stated as like, not like this is what it symbolizes, but that's one of the feelings that's going into this.
Maybe not like the direct symbolism one-for-one analogy, but it's
besides
the
the red and
inspiration.
blue. But yeah, like it's kind of going in line with that.
Yeah.
And like when you said, it's like, how do you forgive a monster? It's like, ooh, I don't know if I've thought of a time in history previously where people feel more like somebody opposed to them politically as a monster.
Yeah.
And so it's almost interesting how when you're talking about that and about how that curious, honest exploration, it's like, based on how this show is created, I'm pretty sure I know the political leanings of most of the creators.
Yeah.
But I don't get the idea that they are explicitly stating that one side or the other is right or wrong. There's still that honest exploration. And you can also really think about different characters as being one side or the other. Like Heimerdinger, for example, is very conservative. Like, take things slow, versus Jace, who's like, progress forward. We need to do this.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's positive and negative ways that you could associate that with either the political right or left, depending on how you're looking at it.
Yep.
And it's that piece of like, no matter who you are or where you are in your journey in life, in your political leanings, and like, you can look at this story and you can see things from other people's perspective, no matter where you are.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's
like,
not even like a really a right answer in that circumstance, right?
No,
'Cause,
exactly.
Like, was Heimerdinger right or was Jace right?
That's
not a clear cut answer.
Yeah.
Because it's like the restraint that Heimerdinger is espousing. There is some value to that, but there's also a limitation in his wariness of new things. I think most prominently put forward when I think it's Jace who tells Heimerdinger, like, listen, dude, you live for 300 years.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. What taking time looks like to you is drastically different. Essentially saying, you don't understand us.
Yeah.
And he's right. And I think there's a value then in, there's something interesting. I'll be curious to see how it goes.
He's right. And at the same time, look at what happens when you rush into the future.
Yep. Well, and it shows where they're both potentially wrong,
Yeah.
right? So I'll be curious to see for Heimerdinger in season 2, what him going to the Fireflies and kind of teaming more up with Echo. Like, is that going to be him kind of getting down to the ground level, literally out of his ivory tower, to see how human beings live and to really get more of a grasp of, okay, this is what things are like, not just for me, from my perspective, but from other people's perspective too.
Totally. Yeah. I don't know whether this lines up with things more politically or more thematically or more, but there's this interesting divide between characters who are stuck in the past and characters who are stuck in the future. Like Jace and the rest of the council is like, we need to look forward, we need to progress, we need to advance, we need to blah, 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 blah. Jinx and Vi are like stuck in the past. Like, we need, like, I need to fix what's broken.
Get my sister back.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm haunted by the demons of the people that I killed in the past.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of interesting, both sides are broken because you're so far gone in your, like, looking too far into the future is detrimental. We see that in Piltover and in the Council.
Yeah.
Looking too far into the past is like, that's detrimental. Even Echo at one point says to Vi,
which was, by the way, a lovely moment in their hug that mirrors when she hugged him goodbye at the
it's
beginning.
so true. Yeah. And it's one of those things where like the brash, like we're gonna we're stoic, and then that's broken by human connection.
Yeah.
It's such a good moment. But when she says that, like, hey, I should have been there for you, she's stuck in the past, she's reliving, I should have done this. And Echo says,
I should have been there. For you. For everyone.
That's a good way to drive yourself crazy.
it's like, it's on the nose.
Yeah.
But it's like, Jinx's problem is she's stuck in the past and cannot move forward. That's your problem too. Piltover and the Council is stuck in the future. Vi and Jinx are stuck in the past.
There's even pieces with like Vander and Silco too, right? Where it's like, what's their, again, they're both kind of paired in their wanting to protect and take care of the Undercity.
Yeah.
Totally different motivations,
Yes.
and their perspectives being like almost less about future and past and more of like Silco's looking at what do we have to gain.
Yes.
Vander's looking at what do we have to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And that frames the way that they then try to interact with Piltover.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vander being, it's not exactly on the up and up, but like more straightforward and like, hey, let's work together and forge some kind of peace.
Yeah.
And then Silco's more like, let me get my teeth in and kind of manipulate the Piltover system to then get me ingratiated to where I'm in a position where I want to.
It's so cool. That's so true. But then they
Like partnership versus manipulation.
Yeah. But despite those differences, both Vander and Silco end up in exactly the same place. Give up your kid to us for the benefit of everybody else around you.
Yeah.
Because Vander's like, who caused the explosion? Your kids. Give them up. And then Silco at the very end, it's like,
who caused this whole mess with the crystal? Jinx, your kid. Give her up.
And it's like they're both in exactly the same position. It doesn't matter. They both took a very different route to get there, polar opposites, but they ended up in the same place.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
It's like the more you look, the more you're rewarded.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen a show that so perfectly embodies the concept that the South Park creators talked about in their NYU lecture that's kind of gone viral, where it's like, what makes a good story if the words and then connect your plot points versus but and therefore? Like everything in this show is preceded and then facilitated by the thing that just happened. So it's like Vi and Powder and the gang go to steal the crystal. They stole the crystal, which caused Jace to have his illegal laboratory research found out by the Council. So then Heimerdinger has to come in and he tells Jace, like, you can't mention magic to the Council, but Jace decides to mention it anyways. Therefore, he's banished. So he's gonna, end it all. But then Victor comes in and saves his life. Therefore, they end up finding the Hextech technology. That would have never happened if Powder and Vi decided to rob somewhere different.
Yeah.
It mattered. And it caused that chain reaction of everything else happening, not just in Piltover, but then everything happening in the underworld in Zaun as well.
Like everything is connected.
Yeah, because the explosion happened, then the enforcers went down and like, somebody's got to pay. Who did this? We got to hold somebody accountable. Yeah. Vander gives himself up, but Silco sent his goons to capture Vander. So therefore, Vi wants to go and help, but she thinks Powder isn't ready. Yeah. She decides to go and try to help out, but everything goes wrong, causes an explosion. Therefore, everybody dies.
Yeah.
Therefore, the fissure between her and Vi is like everything. And that all started at that one instance at the very beginning. Let's steal from this random place because we got a tip. It's like, but that initiated everything else that happens in both Piltover and Zaun.
It's a chain reaction.
Yeah. And it all connects and it's all happening because the previous thing happens, not just because like an interesting plot. You want to have this interesting thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, it's, but this happens. Therefore this happens. Therefore this happens. But this happens. Therefore this happens.
Yeah. It's like that framework of storytelling feels like it leaves a lot more room for things to go wrong.
Yes.
And for personal agency. It's like,
well, decisions matter.
Yeah. It's like, it's not like, it kind of avoids a Deus Ex Machina from happening.
Yes.
Because it's not like, oh, things just kind of come in and sweep and clean everything up. It's life gets in the way.
Yes.
I'm trying to do this, but I'm blocked, I'm stopped, I'm prevented from doing something.
Marcus stops me from going back to help Powder.
Yeah. So it's almost like everything revolves around character agency. It's both what do I choose to do that's successful and what do I choose to do that is blocked.
Yes.
And it's those pieces, but it all focuses on character choices, what they decide to do, those tough decisions where they decide to do the right thing and it works, or they decide to do the right thing and guess what? The world has other things in mind.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. They choose to do the wrong thing, but somebody prevents it in a good way, or they choose to do the wrong thing and hey, it ended up working out. And so now this cataclysm decides to happen.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you is, we haven't really had the opportunity to do this yet because I don't know if you haven't started watching season 2, I imagine.
I have not seen a single frame of the new season apart from the trailer.
I've been avoiding spoilers as much as possible.
Predictions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Based on where you've watched the narrative go.
Okay.
Based on what you've learned from the creators about why they're making the show, the questions they're asking, their motivations behind it.
Yeah.
Where do you see characters going?
I'm torn because what I see on the one hand is the central theme, Jinx and Vi and their relationship. What I expect to see just on my first instinct is that they started together, they end apart in season 1, and in season 2 they're going to come back together. And so that's going to happen, but I don't know if that's going to end that way. So I don't know if the circle is going to complete or if it's going to get close and then separate again.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those two. I have the feeling that based on like the way that like the lore is set up in the world to keep it sort of going into the ether, it's going to be, we're going to end apart still. Maybe understanding each other a little bit more, but it's going to be, my guess is that they're probably going to do something on the bridge where they're looking at each other and they've maybe almost reconciled, but they still don't see eye to eye.
Like some sort of team up thing where they've both kind of come against a mutual enemy.
Yes.
And it's like, we still clearly care about each other, but we almost can't be together.
Yeah.
Because we're so separate.
Exactly. I think that Vi is she's pretty clearly based on the lore of LOL and based on where she's going in the story, she's going to end up more on Piltover's side.
Yeah.
She's going to become more or less an enforcer, the thing that she hated at the very beginning, which kind of is thematic, like you become the thing that you hated, which is kind of be kind of an interesting little subplot there.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think is going to happen to her. I think Victor's going to become, I don't know who the wielder of the Arcane is. Is that an Arcane?
No, like a wizard or something like that, or like
I think he might be the wizard that helped save Jace at the very beginning with him and his mom. I don't know if
like
there's
goes back in time and then
maybe we've seen that Echo's thing is about time manipulation and stuff.
That's true.
Maybe there's a thing about like we're dealing with magic that can send you instantly across the galaxy. Maybe there's something about time as well.
Yeah.
So I would not be, it wouldn't be out of the realm for me to consider that Victor helped in his last ditch effort. He went back in time and helped Jason started this whole thing. Anyways.
That would be fascinating.
And Jace, I think, he's going to end up either dying or stepping down at the end of all this and sort of going back to a quote unquote normal life.
That's an interesting thing to see. What are they going to do with characters who specifically are champions in the game? Ooh. Will they kill off champions in the game or will they not? Similar to like, will they have Jinx and Vi reconcile?
Yeah.
Or will they keep them on separate sides like they do in the game?
Yeah, well, I was about to say like kill a champion might also be like kill their storyline. Like, are they going to end the show in season 2 the same way that they are always in the game, or are they going to change that at all?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That'll be, and I don't know how they do. I think there are good and bad ways to do that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's one that's right or wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be just interesting.
I agree. Around. Do you have any predictions?
So one thing that I'm curious about predicting is who survives Jinx's attack on the council room. Because I think there are going to be a few characters who die in that. I think Jace lives.
Yes.
But if I was going to predict, I think
his girlfriend lives.
No, I think Mel dies.
She dies?
I think she's going to die.
No, really?
I think she will, partially because...
I thought I saw her in the trailer.
That might be true. So I haven't seen the trailer, so I don't know. The reason I'd be motivated for that is because her mom, who comes from the other nation, is one of the champions of the game. And I wonder how much Mel's death might motivate her mom to do something.
That's a good point.
So I'm predicting that Mel is going to die.
Okay.
I'm also predicting that Caitlyn's mom's going to die.
I was about to say,
because
her mom's
again,
dead. Her mom's so dead.
Because there's like, she's not an important character, and then Caitlyn's an important character because she's a champion. How much is that going to motivate her? How does that maybe change her character?
Yep.
Will that potentially make, because an interesting thing with Caitlyn is she's been pretty straight and narrow the entire time. She always tends towards this like kind of lawful good alignment.
Yes.
Where she's pretty much always doing the right thing.
Yes.
Even when, and there's going to be something interesting about the corruption of the Undercity and what it does to Caitlyn.
Yes.
Because there's a piece where kind of like in a funny, joking way, Vi is kind of corrupting her by bringing her to like the brothel area and kind of like, oh, and then there's also the piece of being betrayed by the guy in the Undercity who she helped, and then, he ends up kind of,
selling
for the shimmer, he's selling you out. Caitlyn telling Vi, Jinx is too far gone.
Yeah.
And then Jinx knocks her out. Wake up. Oh, guess what?
Yeah.
Sorry, she killed your mom.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about how that might propel Caitlyn's character and whether or not that's going to bring her more to like this almost kind of like Heimerdinger to a more conservative side in an unhelpful way.
Yeah.
Like, is she going to become way more
authoritarian?
Like, law of the land. If you don't follow the rules, then there's a real problem. And I wonder if that's going to create conflict between her and Vi.
Yeah.
When it comes to Vi's like easily way more like, do what you got to do to make things happen, bend the rules, find a creative solution. Is Caitlyn going to be more like buy the book, do the right thing? And are they going to have problem solving issues together because of their different perspectives?
Yes. I think that's going to happen for sure. 1000%. I think Heimerdinger's going to play like a Yoda-esque character.
Yeah.
He's
kind
going
of
to
for Echo maybe a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I wonder if there's going to be like not almost like a healing, but like a realignment for Heimerdinger. Like maybe in this moment of high conflict, there is some need for progress. And so I will help Echo when it comes to making more progress when it comes to the scientific piece of things.
Yeah. Oh gosh. This is like, why is it that there's this like thematic archetype of like Yoda was this like force for good on the council. Then when things went bad, he, dipped out and went to Dagobah. Heimerdinger was on the council. Things went bad. Then he dipped out to Echo's tree. It's like, it is the same plot. It is Star Wars again.
So this is like a huge pie in the sky wish, but I think it'd be great if we ever had the chance to talk with or interview or sit down with Christian and Alex. I'd love to ask them. Why did you just make Heimerdinger Yoda?
Yeah.
It's kind of reductive, don't you think?
Gosh.
No, a total joke.
That's so funny.
It's a funny thematic, like...
It's true, though.
Tiny little alien mentor.
Yeah. The wisest one is the smallest one.
Yep. Which is maybe like, again, the contrast, whatever it is. But yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I'm really curious to see what season 2 does now.
Me too.
I think when it comes to that like fundamental question, can you forgive a monster? I think that question is going to remain open-ended.
Yes,
and
I agree.
I think that the writers are probably going to give us several different answers in different contexts with different character relationships that will say it kind of depends. And they're going to give us a couple different examples, maybe with Vi and with Powder or Jinx, with Jace and with Victor, and probably a few other different character combinations that'll be like, listen, here's the different ways that it can play out. Here are the different outcomes. You take a look and see which one feels most reminiscent to you in your scenario. Does that feel right or does that not feel right? I don't know, but we'll find out. I think they're going to present it like that.
Yeah, they've done such a good job of not spoon feeding you what they want you to think and just letting you explore. Last prediction, do you think that season 1 or season 2 is going to be better after once you've watched both of them? Like, which one do you think you're going to like? Okay, 2 questions. Which one do you think is going to be, you think, more artistically amazingly crafted, and which one do you think you're going to enjoy more?
That's a great question.
I think I'm going to enjoy season 1 more.
Yeah, I feel like I might enjoy season 1 more, but season 2 might be even better crafted. And I wonder how much of that has to do with the set of expectations.
Yeah.
Like, now that you have season 1 set, now there's a bar to be raised. And even if they raise it like just a little bit, is that going to offset the novelty factor of like,
this came out of nowhere.
The first season was so new and different and crazy and like...
Yeah. I'm torn because you have new writers at the helm who did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Are they going to get even better, or are our expectations just too high now?
Yeah. So maybe, again, pie in the sky wish, if Christian or Alex or Amanda or anybody else in the team ever sees this.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe to them, like regardless of what the outcome for season 2 is, how it's received, whether or not people say compared to season 1 it's better or worse, they like fell off or jumped the shark or whatever it is, like know that you guys have already done something amazing that hopefully is going to change the trajectory of the medium of animation in general.
And
so,
how stories are done moving into the
Yeah.
future. This was such a breath of fresh air compared to the garbage heap that's been spoon-fed
Yeah.
to us for the last 6-7 years.
So like know that you guys have already done something incredible, and I don't know if maybe you feel the same way. I imagine you might, but
Yeah.
like for me as somebody who has this hidden aspiring writer inside them, to see your guys' journey and know that as relatively fresh to the long-term narrative writers like you were, like you're a huge inspiration for us and probably so many other people to just have something that you're passionate about, a vision, an idea, and to fight to make it a reality. No matter what happens with the story, the fact that you've done that is already amazing. And so like, bravo, congratulations, props to you guys. You should be really proud of yourselves for what you've accomplished.
And what do you know? It's an award-winning show that everybody loves.
Yeah, maybe other people also kind of have that opinion too.
Yeah.
Go figure. Emmys,
Amazing.
you know, whatever. What? No big deal.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's encouraging to see that you on your first try, you can do something amazing.
Yeah.
Even though it's not your first try, I know that like it's lots of years spent writing and crafting stories about characters, but the first time putting it into a narrative cinematic world.
Yeah. It's a 10-year overnight success.
It's a good way to put it.
This is what happens when you bake the cake right. When you put the icing on, be like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah.
Been
'cause
baking for 8 years.
I baked the cake for 8 years. I think I did it right.
Yeah. Guys, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. I am so happy that this turned out to be better than I expected.
Yeah.
I think there's few pieces of media that have been hyped up so much that everybody loves it, and yet it still exceeds my expectations when we end up watching it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that note, we're going to be coming out with our take on season 2 in just a little bit. That'll probably be the next episode right after this one. So subscribe. Make sure that you check in about 2 weeks' time to see that episode come out. We're super excited. We've kept ourselves completely. We don't know what's happening at all. We've completely averted our eyes from any stuff that's happening in season 2. So you'll get our fresh perspective. And who knows? Maybe you'll be surprised along with us about what ends up happening.
Yeah, it is going to be exciting. We will see you guys all for season 2 review.
Awesome. Take care.